Hi, welcome to AI in Action. My name is Mari, and I'm here with my husband Jim. And of course, it is Sunday afternoon. And what do we always do on Sunday afternoons? We sit on the couch and we talk about artificial intelligence. So today, though, instead of actually going through the headlines and just kind of telling you some of our opinions about artificial intelligence, we have a guest. I would like to say welcome to Mike Kentz. Mike is a teacher in Savannah, Georgia. He is a ninth grade teacher that does college prep and honors English. So, Mike, welcome to AI in Action. We're so glad that you were able to join us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, so I would love it if you would just tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and tell us how the weather is there in Savannah.
It is beautiful. Actually, we're just coming out of what a lot of people hope is the last cold snap of the winter. Usually, this is the time period when it starts to turn, and today is beautiful. So, I think we're at about 65, 66 degrees, somewhere in that range. So, we're coming out of it and getting to that warmth that you love
That's
down here in South
very,
Georgia.
very nice. We actually hit 91 in Texas today. So I think we're going to have a very brutal summer. But anyway, tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Sure. I have been a teacher for 9 years. Originally, when I got out of college, I started as a financial journalist in New York City around 2010. And I covered the over-the-counter derivatives market for about 6 years. And along the way, kind of thought about changing into teaching a couple of times, and then finally took the leap in 2016 and became a middle school writing teacher at a public charter school in Brooklyn. And a few years ago, my wife and I, we moved down to Savannah, Georgia during COVID. We wanted to try something new, and we're down here. She's a teacher as well. She's a kindergarten teacher. I'm a high school teacher. We got a dog named Blue and a cat named Hallie, and we love the weather down here. The pace is very different from living in Manhattan and Brooklyn, where we used to live for a long time. But we're really happy down here. It's been a trip for sure.
Is that why you said you wanted to make a change and you actually made the change when you were in New York? Was it a pace thing? Is that why you decided to switch from being a derivatives reporter to an English teacher?
No, I actually, when I started out as a reporter, I wanted to cover either sports, education, or politics.
Ah,
Yes, those were my passion areas. But in 2010, coming out of the crisis, jobs, of course, were scarce, but also the journalism industry was in the process of compression that is has was going on already for a couple of years, and it's continued for the last 10 or 15 years. And the only way I really found my way into journalism was to cover finance. And so I decided to do that because I love the idea of being a reporter, and I loved being a reporter, truthfully. But along the way, I had always expected, oh, I'll do this for 3 or 4 years or something, and then I'll make a lateral move into a subject that I'm more interested in. And as that compression continued, I could kind of see the writing on the wall. It was either stay a financial journalist for my entire career, which was appealing in some ways, or try to move to something that would be more fulfilling. And so teaching was always number two or number three on my career list. And I remember actually shooting my dad an email. He's always been kind of my North Star. And I remember sending him an email and saying, don't think, just answer my email as fast as you can. What did you always think I was going to be when I was growing up? And he said, I thought you'd be an English teacher and a basketball coach. And that was inspiring for me. And that was the catalyst. And I made the switch about 6 to 8 months later.
cool. And you are a coach also, right?
Correct. Yeah. Basketball and lacrosse.
Yeah. One of the things my husband and I, we've had three children go through the public education system here in Texas. And one of the things that we always say that has one of the most profound effects, either positive or negative, on a student is really the teacher that's also the coach. So,
Especially English.
especially English, because, it definitely, if you have a really good coach and a really good English teacher who can teach you how to communicate, then that gives you a really big leg up in the world today. So tell us. Of course, we talk about artificial intelligence all the time. We're really into artificial intelligence. We go around and we train other teachers and school districts and speak at conferences and stuff about it. Jim got really involved in artificial intelligence, I guess, probably 9 months, at least 9 months before it became a really big thing. Because he's an engineer and he likes to just pick everything apart and know exactly how it works and why it works and so forth and so on. But what got you interested in artificial intelligence?
Sure, yeah. I was one of those teachers who was kind of putting up walls when ChatGPT first had its major kind of big moment. I guess it's almost 2 years ago now, or is it over 2 years? I'm not sure.
School.
Um, yeah, I was one of the teachers who kind of put on blinders at first for probably 8 months or 9 months after ChatGPT 3 was released, or 3.5. But I remember over the summer, my principal actually had us read a book called Who Moved My Cheese? I don't know if you know it. It's sort of a famous business book. It's really short. It's written as a children's parable, and it's all about being adaptable and flexible. And, it's sort of like just a thing we were going to talk about when we came back to school. And I read it, and I remember having this moment like, what am I doing putting blinders on? What am I doing avoiding this when it's very clearly going to be a major part of my life and my students' life? I need to change my mindset. I need to move with the tide and start to learn this. So back in August, that's when I kind of changed my mindset, and my school allowed me to start an exploration program. And I grabbed about 6 or 7 upperclassmen and started exploring with them. And that was really where the ball started rolling downhill.
So I'd like to point out the one thing that you just said that immediately kind of like popped into my mind was that the school allowed you to start a program. So do you think that that's really important, is that you have to have the administrators and everyone kind of behind you? Otherwise, you don't get to do a lot in your school, right? So you have a very supportive administrative team.
Definitely, yeah. There's a lot of flexibility and independence at my school. I think that's one of the benefits of being at a private school. You don't have quite as much constrictions on your parameters in terms of what you can and can't do. And I
Uh-huh.
kind of, there was a discussion of, okay, well, do we need money for this program? And I said, you know what, let's keep it simple. Just let me get 5 kids. Let me make sure their parents are on board, and we're just going to work outside of school hours on figuring this whole thing out together. And they were completely on board with that. And yeah, no, it's been very supportive, and I think that's a huge deal. You need to have somebody in your corner who's saying, yeah, go ahead, explore, experiment, see what happens. And I have that, so I'm lucky.
So I'm going to kind of skip one of the questions. I'd sent you a list of questions. So I'm going to kind of skip real quick to
Mhm.
the one that's like after the next one I was going to ask. And that
Okay.
is, what are you seeing from like your teachers, your technology specialists, and your administrators? You just said your administrators were really supportive, but what about the other teachers? Have you seen anything like a lot of fear, or, what have you experienced being successful at your district when it comes to your coworkers?
Yeah, I think, I've tried to generate conversations across different disciplines at my school. And generally speaking, the conversations kind of go one way. The teachers will say to me, you're right, Mike, we do need to really start having more conversations about this. We do need to start to be more proactive. But when it kind of goes to the next step of starting to actually apply, or apply it in the classroom, or figure out how we're going to teach it, or figure out what tools we're going to use or not use, I think people get either, I don't know if it's fear or being feeling overwhelmed. I think it's one of the two. I
Mhm.
definitely think it was fear probably 6, 7, 8 months ago. My initial discussions, I think everyone was like, this is too scary. I'm angry. There was a lot of denial going on. And now it's more of, there's just so much going on. I can't even keep up with it, Mike. Nobody's like against learning it. It's just too much. And so that has been an obstacle. Originally, when we started this program in August, the goal was to create a faculty committee by December, but I found that to be, we couldn't figure out exactly how to fit it into teachers' regular schedules without making it feel like, an obligation that they didn't want to do, or having to put money behind it. So we haven't gotten that far, but there are discussions that are ongoing about how to handle that.
Are you
Yeah.
sure you haven't been in our presentations? Or maybe you've been to Llano ISD, because what you just said was so spot on to what we've had here. I
Mm.
mean, that was really amazingly accurate for what we had. We experienced it almost to the letter, what you just said.
Yes, we gave the first presentation at our district beginning of the school year last year, and
The first one was even before that. It was
even
the end
before
of the
that.
previous year.
And we had actually a technology teacher, and we were so excited about showing her what it could do, like with her little programming class that she was doing. She does the UIL programming team, and we
Mm.
were like, "Hey, look, it can debug the code, and it can give you some examples, and it can, like step the kids through it." And we checked back with her about 3 weeks later, and she literally said exactly what you just said. that she was so overwhelmed with other things that she had just put it on the pile, that she hadn't had a chance to look at it yet.
Yeah.
So I did a Medium article not too long ago about how teachers are up to their blanks and alligators. That's why they're not worried about AI, because there's so many other things that are overwhelming them with, administrative tasks and, differentiation and what we call unfunded mandates that the state puts into the classroom. So, but anyway,
Yeah.
so you're hearing the same things that we're hearing. So Jim had put a question here about your go-to AI was character AI, and that
Mm.
you had mentioned that in one of the articles that we'd read that you've been doing. Are there any other AIs that you use?
Yeah, I use ChatGPT almost every day, I would say.
The version, of course.
Yes. Actually, you broke up a little bit there. Did you say version 4?
Yeah, premium. You pay for the
Yes,
premium. Hmm.
I do. And that's another example where the school has been supportive. I signed up for it as a personal account, not thinking that the school would necessarily want to support it. And then I mentioned it in passing to an administrator, and he said, "Well, why are you paying for that? Let us pay for it." And I was like, "Whoa, okay." So the school is now sponsoring myself and another teacher. There's 2 teachers now who have premium accounts, and he and I talk periodically about what we can and can't do with it. So yeah, character AI is what I used in the classroom. I think, I don't necessarily view that as the most effective or useful tool for everyday use. I think it's great for entertainment purposes, and it's can show kids, this great expanse and potential of what AI can do and how we can use it. But yeah, for my everyday use, it's ChatGPT pretty much.
Well,
Hmm.
it's interesting you mentioned that because I was looking at the AIs that get used a lot. What websites have the most hits not long ago, and character AI was like second or third on the list. And when I played with it originally, I'm like, I don't know what I would do with this.
Hmm.
So I'm kind of interested in hearing about the experience you had with it and your perspective, because obviously it was successful for you. So maybe I missed something whenever I was playing with that. So at
What
some
is
point,
what
I'd
is
like.
your in-class experience? How do you use it? Tell us about that.
Yeah, no, Jim, I actually think you kind of hit the nail on the head there because it is a little bit all over the place. Some of those bots they can be they can be emotional, let's put it that way. They can, some of them, if there's a villain character, it can be profane, it can be vulgar. And those bots they're user generated. So users are creating all kinds of interesting bots that are not, sometimes are useful and sometimes are not. And so what I decided to do with it is I decided to roll it out to the kids and put some really, I guess you could say, strict parameters around what they were going to use it for, and then monitoring the use of it myself. So we finished reading Catcher in the Rye, and I found a couple of Holden Caulfield bots on that platform. And I tested out a handful of them, and they were okay. They had a lot of inaccuracies. They seemed to kind of be all over the place, but I thought this is actually a really good opportunity to teach them AI literacy. Not so much let's interact with this character and it'll be fun. Let's see if they can pick up on how flawed these bots are themselves. So before I rolled it out to them, I had them generate interview questions in groups and really be thoughtful about how can we get this Holden bot talking, quote unquote talking. How can we make this bot comfortable? How can we, show me you understand the character itself from the book? What are some of those pain points or those nerves that you might touch that might send the bot off the rails? How can we avoid them, et cetera, et cetera? And I think that was helpful because it showed them that what you put into AI really matters. The questions matter. And it's not just a function of like, let me just throw some stuff and see what happens. After that, I told them, listen, I'm going to actually grade your chat transcript. So when you talk to Holden AI, I want you to actively listen. I want you to respond and show that you're listening to this bot as if it's a person you're speaking to. Be a good conversationalist. Show empathy. If the bot starts to be emotional, as Holden Caulfield would be, um, respond and don't just move on to the next question in your interview list. And at the end of it, because I had their chat transcripts in front of me, I could kind of confirm whether or not they got something out of it. And I had about 55 students do it, and I would say north of 40 had really meaningful, relatively meaningful, I should say, chat transcripts with the bot itself. And then there were some that didn't. And, I'll pause there because I've been talking for a while. I don't know if you have any questions.
I think it's really interesting. You said that to me, they're getting something out of this that just sitting there and reading the book and then answering some questions or doing some vocabulary or taking a pop quiz or, the traditional way that we would make sure, you read this chapter out loud, you read this chapter out loud, that kind of thing. It sounds like they really are getting more out of it doing it this way than the traditional way. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, they loved it. Honestly, I tell people this is the best project I've ever done in 9 plus, I'm in my ninth year of teaching. By far, because they found it to be really fun, really engaging. And then I remember the looks on their faces when they came in. I had them interview the bot for homework, and then they came in and we discussed it. And when they started sharing with each other, and they all interviewed the same bot, and when
Uh-huh.
they started sharing with each other and they started realizing that the bot was producing, it was acting differently for every one of them, even though it was the same bot, their minds were blown. They'd never interacted with something that could be so different, and yet it all came from the same place. So there were
Right.
all kinds of, engagement moments like that that I loved.
Right. Well, I mean, whenever you give a student a research project or something like that, and they go to the traditional indexed web and they pull up 5 articles and they all read the same articles, they're all going to get the same stuff. So the fact that it wasn't all the same thing because it is generating content versus just, indexing it and giving it to you, I can see how that would be like absolutely mind blowing for students. What about the future of AI when it comes to what your students think? Do you think that this is going to change their opinion about AI in general? Or do you think that they're like, what we find is that a lot of times the student is so far ahead of the teacher when it comes to technology like that, but only when it comes to technology for entertainment or technology for immediate feedback? Do you think it's going to change their mind about what AI can do in the future because of that?
Yeah, in my case, my students actually were not ahead of me, because most of them, their parents are pretty strict, and they're kind of saying, no, you can't use it at all. So a lot of them really didn't have much exposure going in to this
Mm-hmm.
experience, which was great for me, because one of the reasons why I'm being so intentional about teaching AI literacy in the context of my English class is that I want to be the first person that works with them using AI. I want to be you only get one chance at a first impression, and if the first impression they have comes from TikTok or something else like that, it's going to be potentially very damaging or concerning. So, to answer your question, though, I was really happy to see that a lot of them, on their own, were able to identify that there are some very, it was they felt excited about it, and they were like, "This is cool. I get it." They started interviewing their favorite movie characters. They started interviewing their favorite TV characters and things like that. But they also recognized the limitations, and so they were able to kind of pinpoint or triangulate that center point, which is what I wanted them to do, to be excited about it, but also not to be, thinking that it's magic or something like that, and recognizing that there are limitations. So it was a little bit of both, I guess, to answer your question.
So how did they, from the just the pure execution side, did the students create their own character AI accounts to get on there?
Yes, they did. And I reached out to all the parents ahead of time, and said, "Are you comfortable with this?" Luckily, everybody was. And there's, of course, the free accounts. What was, the thing about exploration is that it's a little bit risky. And I was a little concerned. I mean, what am I letting the cat out of the bag a little too early? And I'm at an all boys school, and my boys are very comfortable talking to their teachers. They kind of tell us everything, which is great. And they did come to me and tell me that after we did this project, they made their own bot, of one of our teachers, which was,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yikes.
uh,
Yeah.
yes, exactly.
I'm wondering, I mean, considering, because when I looked on character AI a year ago or 6 months, whenever I looked at it, there's, as you said earlier, there's a, a lot of variety in bots that are on there, some not so good. How did the parents feel about, I mean, you can't filter it. So how did the parents feel? Did the parents monitor them, or did they just trust the boys were going to stay away from the nasty interactive bots that are on there too? Or how do they do that?
When I sent out the email to all the parents, the only responses I got were that they trusted me, which was great. So I didn't get a lot of individual feedback about how they were necessarily handling it at home, but I did, make it clear to the parents, I'm telling the students, I'm gonna look at your chat transcript. That's a big part of the project itself. And so I guess maybe as a function of that, maybe parents felt like they could trust the process itself. And I didn't get a ton of feedback in terms of what parents were doing at home. I guess they just decided to trust me and their boys at the same time.
That's
That's
good to
good.
hear,
That's
actually,
good.
because I think the trust between the parent, we trusted our own kids a lot to make good decisions because they obviously can't never learn to make good decisions if you don't trust them to actually do it.
Yes.
But we've seen here some hyper protective over, helicopter parents that were hovering anytime we would let them do something on the web. They were always asking me, do you filter this? Do you filter that? So I was curious about your experience with that. It sounds like you've got a good, solid group of parents as well.
So, Mike, what's the next thing? I mean, you've this is something that you've done. Tell me what's your next classroom project? Because I was in the classroom for a really long time, and in kindergarten also. By the way, God bless your wife for
Hmm.
that. Um, but I taught you.
I'll let her know you said that.
Yeah,
She'll
but
appreciate that.
I lasted 1 year in kindergarten, and I was like,
Mm.
please let me out, because. But anyway, I was in junior high for a long time, and I taught technology, and we did 3D printing, we did laser cutters, we did coding. I mean, we had all of this amazing equipment that the kids were able to interact with and to touch and to do projects. And I still really had a hard time finding the next thing to get them engaged. It was like they would be engaged for a while when we were like using the laser cutter. And once they did it once or twice, they were like, oh, So, what's the next thing that you're going to do in the classroom?
Sure. It's funny that you mentioned that because I was just talking with one of the boys in that class about we're about to finish Romeo and Juliet this week. And I said, "Hey, do you think it'd be fun to interview Romeo?" And he said, "No, we did that. We're good." So, and I kind of expected that. Once you've done it once, the novelty of it does kind of wear off. You can still use it again, but I think you have to be creative about how you use it a second time.
Hmm.
To answer your question, I want to hit, if you don't mind, I want to hit kind of three things because one is a classroom thing, but the others are school wide. And I just wanted to mention them because I'm excited about them.
Sure.
The first is that the school is giving me the opportunity to offer an elective that will be essentially digital literacy and AI literacy combined for the upperclassmen next year, which we have not had in the past. Maybe we should have, but we haven't. So I'm excited about that. That's pending student demand, but if there are enough kids that want to do the class and it fits their requirements, we're going to do that. So that's exciting. The other element is um, I have the students in my AI exploration program actually drafting a student written AI policy for the school. And I think the AI policy can only be so different. I don't think that there's that much latitude for a brand new policy, but I'm enjoying watching them grapple with pretending to be an admin and thinking about, okay, what about the freshmen that are coming in next year? What should we tell them? And so I'm excited about both of those things. But to get to your question on the classroom side, I actually was just working on this project today. What I'm going to do for Romeo and Juliet is I'm going to do 3 or 4 days of essentially prompt engineering practice. I'm going to teach them what prompt engineering is with some definitions, examples, and analogies. Then I'm going to teach them maybe 2 or 3 approaches, broad approaches. Then I'm going to have them annotate 2 sample chat transcripts that I have generated to see how, if you prompt AI in certain ways, it can be significantly more effective and helpful. And then after all of that, I'm going to give them some very broad, very vague, very difficult project ideas. I'll give them a couple of choices, and I'm going to say, for the very first step of this project, you have to use ChatGPT, and you have to use one of the prompt engineering approaches that I've taught you, and you're going to share the chat transcript with me afterwards, and that's going to be, I don't know, I haven't decided, 25% or 50% of the grade for the overall project. And then once they finish they're going to use ChatGPT essentially as a brainstorming partner to help them figure out how to handle this project. And then from there, they'll go on and actually create the project depending on what they choose. So that's my next idea.
Wow. I wish I was in your classroom. That sounds like a great, sounds like it's going to be a lot of fun. It really, really does.
I hope
Um,
so.
yeah. So, okay, we have just a few minutes left. So, last question. what do you see education wise? Just, I'm talking United States of America educational system. What is AI going to do to change the educational system?
That's a big one. That's a big question.
It really
Um,
is.
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Well, we really want
Um,
Yeah,
to.
tell us the answer because we don't know it. So, yeah.
right, right. Um, I do think AI has a very major role in the classroom. My sort of moonshot ideal world, I think it would be really cool. I'm not saying this is going to happen, but I think it would be really cool if we had schools at the junior high and high school level that maybe were subject agnostic and they were almost entirely project based and involved AI at multiple layers of the system, where kids are coming in and you're essentially saying to them, okay, what problem do you want to solve for this week or this month? And how can we use AI to start approaching that problem? And I don't know. I'm going to pause there. What is your, can I ask you, what's your initial reaction to that thought?
Well, Mari and I are, I can answer part of that. We're big believers in project based learning
Mhm.
because of the fact that, being an engineer, I really, really I believe in projects that you're personally connected to. And if you've got a personal connection, you're going to learn more. It's more engaging for you.
Mm,
So I really think that there's a huge potential to do what you're thinking, whether or not the movement can happen in our lifetime if it can move fast enough versus just trying to ignore it as long as they can. That's a different question. That's a little more difficult to answer. As a technology director, I spend a lot of time trying to figure out how to make technology easier and more integrated into the classroom in ways that make sense.
mm,
And it's been a very, very difficult thing. But I do agree with you. I'm a 100%. I think schools should be not only project based learning, but I think the projects should be focused personally, community wide kind of projects. Mari and I tried to do that a lot in the maker space. So yeah, you got my vote. Whether or not you can get it, whether or not it happens, that's a whole different discussion.
One of the
right.
things we also talk about a lot is, the digital divide, which we tend to call it the opportunity divide. Well, one of the things here in rural America, in the middle of hill country in Texas, we have, we have broadband issues, we have all sorts of technology issues,
Socioeconomic issues.
socioeconomic issues. So I hope that there's someone out there, especially corporate, that's like, hey, you're a teacher, so your school's not going to have to pay the $20 a month for you to
Per
have,
person.
per person to have
Mm,
that GPT, premium. If you're in the educational system, then here's a 50% discount or 75% discount, so that, one of the things that I think bothers us the most is that we want our future to be trained on,
Our past.
on our past when it comes to the equipment that they're using and the information that they have. And, um, we want to be trained. We want to train them on that, but we still want them to be able to take over the world when they're out of school. So
yes.
I hope that the policymakers pay attention.
Yeah.
Me too.
I hope so. Anyway,
Yeah.
Mike, we only have a couple more minutes. I would like to say thank you very much for being involved in this conversation. I think it's amazing that you are embracing artificial intelligence in your classroom.
And it sounds like you're doing it in a
And
very smart way.
yes, it does. It
Thank
sounds
you. Thank you very much.
very smart way. It also, I think it's amazing that you have administration that's, willing to get behind you on that. So, um,
Absolutely. Yeah, I do feel lucky and I'm looking forward to, running more of these projects and just figuring out what framework to use. Your question was where are we going to go with this? I think
huh?
the first thing we have to do is change assessment techniques. And so once we can figure that out, then we can sort of build from there.
Yes, I agree. I agree.
Well, we've got a lot of interesting things we're working on, so maybe we can stay in touch in the future and we can tell you about some of the things. I focus it very, very heavily from a technology perspective. So I spend a lot of time very, very deep into AI and creating my own. I think you mentioned somewhere in your stuff about creating your own GPT at some point. I've done many of
Hmm.
those, and I've made a Japanese tutor and I've made a NutriCalc, Nutra coach tutors and all kinds of stuff in those. So there's a lot of potential there. Of course, as Mari said, if the kids can't get access to it because they don't have the premium version, then it's less useful. You can use it as a teaching tool for yourself, but the kids can't access it. So there's some work that needs to be done there. We built our own chat bot for the school district, but we haven't let the kids use it yet. But so we got lots of stuff going on. So if you need any, have any questions you want to bounce off of us, feel free to reach out.
I was actually an administrator also. I was an assistant principal at a campus for some time. So that's why I think it's really great that those administrators are behind you, because
Absolutely.
I know that a lot of administrators tend not to get behind something. They want to get ahead of things when it comes to, like, okay, what's the parents going to say? What's the policy going to look like? How's this going to come back and bite me? They have a lot of that mentality. A lot of times they don't want to just, they don't want to champion something. So anyway,
Yes.
it's been great talking to you. I'm sorry that we are out of time. So I'm going to have to let you go.
Let
No
us
worries.
know.
Thank you very much for having me. I definitely would like to stay in touch. It sounds like you guys are doing some very interesting things.
We'd like to hear an update
Yes.
in the future on yours as well.
Well, you have my email, so please send me an update as to what your next big project is.
Will do. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike.
All right. Bye.
Bye.